Welcome to everybody joining. We'll just wait a few seconds just to let everybody get into the room, okay? I see the numbers are climbing up, which is great. I think the numbers are still steadily climbing. But for those of you who have dialed in already, good morning or afternoon or evening, wherever you're dialing in from. I hope you're all keeping well, and thank you so much for joining us for our Women's Alliance information session today. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Can I just ask some of you to just pop a yes in the field below, just so I know that you can hear us in the chat function. Perfect, thank you so much for those of you that are doing that, that's great. And for those of you that I haven't had the opportunity to speak with as of yet, my name is Corinne and I'm one of the recruitment and admissions managers within the Oxford MBA team. And with me today from the team, I'm pleased to be joined by my colleagues Francisca and Hannah, who some of you may have already spoken to. So thank you both for joining and supporting the webinar today. And we also have, and you can see them hopefully on your screen, we have Alana, who is one of our current students. She is one of the current co-chairs of our Women's Alliance at the school. And also we have Mariah as well, who is one of our alums and was one of the co-chairs of the Alliance during her time at the school. So I think it would be a great time for you actually to introduce yourselves. Alana, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thanks so much, Corinne. So I'm Alana. I'm one of the co-chairs of OWLA. I worked closely with my fellow co-chairs, Lily and Mahi. So there were three of us who kind of led the initiative over this past year. I am American, as you can probably tell from my accent. I lived in New York for a few years before coming to Oxford. I did operations and kind of technology, like technical, like operational work in financial services in New York. And yeah, I'm just excited to be here with you guys, and happy to answer any questions, and hopefully some of you guys are interested in like joining and getting involved. So happy to be a resource.
Awesome. Thanks, Alana. Hi, everyone. I'm Mariah. I'm also American, so we get to hear from two Americans today. It's nice to see you all. I was an MBA 2017 to 2018, so wow, almost 2 years out now, which is crazy. So during my time at Oxford, I was a co-chair of we called it the Oxford Women's Leadership Business Network, the OWLBN, which is now the Women's Alliance. So I'm glad to see it's still alive and kicking, and really glad to hear from Alana about all the great stuff that's happened in this past year. So I am currently now, I live in London. I work at Google doing cloud consulting, so basically cloud technology, customer facing work. And I'm still heavily involved with a lot of women's initiatives inside and outside of my day job. So really glad to chat to you all about how to make the most out of the Women's Leadership Alliance and your year on the MBA.
Fantastic. Thank you both for that great introduction, and thank you both for being so supportive of our initiatives and activities that we're running at school, and being here today to answer some of the questions that our incoming students may have. And as we go along, we will be presenting some information around the Alliance, some of the activities and events that have happened over the last few years, and ways you can get involved. But if you have questions, please do pop them in the Q&A box. We will have time for the second half of the webinar to answer any questions that you may have. So please do keep them coming as we go through, and we'll try and answer as many as we can later on today. So in terms of the Alliance itself, I wanted to provide you with a little bit of context into how the Alliance was formed. So on this slide, you will see the current statement for what OWLA stands for. OWLA is how you will know it once you become part of the Oxford community, and that is the Oxford Women's Leadership Alliance, and these are the three co-chairs and their roles at the moment. So during your time at Oxford, you'll have the chance to become involved in many different schools' Oxford Business Networks, otherwise known as OBNs. There are a lot of abbreviations at the school, and these are comprised of current MBA, EMBA, MFE, and MLF students. So it's a mix of some of those students. So the OBNs are consolidated into 7 core sectors, and these are primarily outward-facing networks that liaise with students' clubs, student networks across the wider university, as well as faculty, our careers service, and many different university centres. These are led by co-chairs, with the support of a committee to run various activities, initiatives, events that they wish to run within their year. And what the OBNs do is they provide you with the opportunity to really enrich your own learning experience. So if you're really interested, for example, going into consulting, you really want to join more of that consulting world and be part of a closer knit society at Oxford, then you may wish to get involved in a network that focuses around that. In the 2017 to 18 cohort, we actually streamlined a number of our network groups, which focused on these specific industries and interests. We had around 20 to 30 originally, so there was quite a lot to manage. And within the school's 5-year plan, 2 of the key priorities are a commitment to gender diversity and also a commitment to Africa. So from this is where 2 alliances were formed. So OWLA was one of these, and also our Oxford Africa Alliance. So these are 2 alliances you can get involved in if you wish during your time at the business school and university. And during launch week, we will be in touch with you to tell you more about the process, how you can nominate yourself to become a co-chair, or how you can nominate yourself to become a committee member, and really get involved with driving that forward for the year ahead. How we choose that is based on a statement you would submit. We would ask you to display areas where you can add value into this type of alliance. So have you been involved in gender equality events, activities, initiatives before? Are you really passionate about this area and have a lot to give in terms of your leadership or your teamwork abilities? So what we're looking for in that statement is how you can really drive this forward alongside the mission of the school and really have that wider involvement within the wider school, but also that university and the wider network with our alumni as well. And I know today Mariah and Alana will really share with you some of the activities and events that have been running throughout their tenure at the school. So in terms of the first slide, I'd like to ask Mariah to really talk through some of the events and activities that you led on as part of your time in the network before it became an alliance, if that's okay.
Of course, thanks, Corinne. So these are, I just put together some bullets of some of the things that we did in the 2017-2018 cohort. And sorry, I'm holding my mic in front of my face because I know if I don't, it gets tangled in my hair and then no one can hear me. So, so I'll just talk through some of them, and if there's any questions or anything that anyone wants to get some more information about, please just let me know. But so one of the initiatives that we ran were, we did a few brown bag kind of lunch and learns. So we just kind of put a call out to the class as the Women's Leadership OBN, so myself and the 2 co-chairs, we kind of tried to crowdsource different topics that women across the MBA wanted to talk about, and then we kind of during lunch would commandeer basically one of the lecture halls. We would actually put a request in to rent it out, but we would take over one of the lecture halls. Everyone could bring their lunches, and then we would talk specifically about, you know, that topic. So whether it was negotiating pay or interviews or post-MBA career plans, or, you know, how do you deal with tough situations being a woman in the world of business. We ran a few of those. They were really, really good. We actually had some EMBAs turn up to some when they were on campus as well. So those were a really fun initiative that we did. Another initiative was the Inspiring Women series. So that was basically joint with the SBS basically careers department as well. So there were quite a few amazing women speakers that came in, and us as the Women's Leadership OBN, we got to kind of sit on the panel, ask some questions of some of these speakers, and I guess have a say in what sort of speakers we would like to see, understand from the rest of the women and students what sort of speakers they would like to hear from in an Inspiring Women series as well. One of the highlights that I think a lot of women remember from the kind of Women's Leadership OBN was the Galentine's Day dinner that we organized. So college dinners are, of course, a huge part of being at Oxford. I'm really hoping that you all get to kind of experience those as soon as you can get on campus. But we did, basically, Exeter College allows for their students to bring, I think, up to 15 guests. And we had quite a few women who were in Exeter College. So we organized a Galentine's Day dinner. We had pink champagne, we had pig hearts everywhere, and it was just I guess a really nice kind of build each other up and sisterly love sort of day, when some women couldn't be with their significant others, some women brought their significant others, but the whole point of it was kind of around women supporting women, and Galentine's Day being a really fun holiday for everyone. One of the other really, really awesome things that we did, which I think just went over really well, and it's one of my really fond memories, was around International Women's Day. We had, I guess in the US we call them like candygrams, but what we did was we got loads of like colored paper, markers, etc. And me and the other two leadership chairs of the Leadership OBN sat in the common room and wrote out a gram to every single woman in the class, just to say Happy International Women's Day. We're so glad you're here. We're, just kind of, again, some inspiring messages. But we did this in the common room, so people would ask what we were doing, and then we asked them if they wanted to write a gram to a woman in the class or an ally too. So we were able to kind of get every single female in the class got an International Women's Day gram, at least one, and some candy as well, because what's some nice words without also a chocolate bar. And so we were able to do this for, we made sure that every single woman in the class got at least one, and it ended up, when we were sorting them into all the pigeonholes, that it was really cool to see how people took part in this and how they wrote letters to each other. And it was a really nice thing to do on International Women's Day for everyone. So that was really easy, really fun, and I think really high impact. Another thing we did was basically webinars for potential female applicants, so very similar to this, but we made sure that there was women-specific ones. We asked to have a female on as many panels as possible, but again, this was of course joint with the SBS Careers Department, and really fun to work with them as well. And then the last thing we did was the Oxford Women in Business Mentorship Program. So OxWib is an undergraduate I guess, extracurricular club that undergrad students within Oxford join, and it's basically just kind of like a club. So we connected with them, and as many of them are 18, 19, 20, have never had jobs before. They're new in university, but they're women interested in business. We had a mentorship pairing between MBAs and interested OxWeb students. It went over really well. It was really nice to kind of talk to an undergrad, really kind of understand what they're looking for, talk to them about what it looks like to be, in the real world, what it's like to have a job. So that was really fun, and another really good experience that I think most of the women on the OBN really appreciated too. So those are many of the initiatives we held during our year. But again, like I said, if you have any questions, or happy to expand on any of those as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mariah. And there's lots of great variety within that. And I especially like the information you provided around the grams as well, and how that was high impact, and doing that within the common room as well, so that you really build up that presence and people are being inquisitive and really asking about what you're doing and finding out more about your kind of what you're standing for and how to get involved. So that's great to hear. Thank you for sharing that. Great, and on the next slide, you'll see a few activities that we've done in between Mariah's year and Alana's year. So I thought it would be good to provide some more context around what we do with careers, and also some of the Inspiring Women series events that we run. So under the careers events, you'll see some of the organisations that we have worked with in the past. These are just two of the bigger events that we've done, but we have done more focused around gender. One of these was the Dalberg Women's event. So we worked closely with Dalberg on gender lens investing, and then student applicants were invited to attend unique case preparation workshops where they had the opportunity to really practice live cases with that organisation. And they could build communication skills, work in a team, take on a leadership role, and also receive feedback. So there was a lot of the softer skills of leadership development that was included within that unique opportunity for them. And also the talent development framework is something that's important to note here. So this is something that runs as part of our careers service and offerings to you as an MBA. So these are open for all students, and these are workshops run by our careers centre, typically on a Friday alongside our careers events and other careers activities that go on. So men and women are welcome to join the sessions, and these focus on issues that are of high interest to women seeking to build confidence and leadership potential. So on the screen you'll see some of the themes that we've run before around salary negotiation, so your brand, imposter syndrome, understanding boards, and some of the others we've run around negotiation, confidence for success as well. So there's a lot we run with our current faculty, our sector consultants, but also alumni as well. So we have alumni that come back and do workshops for us, or we go out and visit organisations predominantly in London, but also other cities nearby to host some of these workshops. And also on the screen, you'll see our Inspiring Women series, and we've got 3 of some of the events that we've run over the past few years. So we run these with Kathy Harvey, who's one of our associate deans at the school, and she's very, very committed to our mission for gender equality and gets involved with a lot of these initiatives that we run. And we invite key prominent female figures from the business world to come and speak at the school or on virtual events if that suits them. So these feature in a programme of events that we run throughout the year. And within these, we usually host in a non-virtual world. We have dinners and drinks where we have intimate networking spaces. And those that are interested in either that industry or the theme, or those particularly within the OWLA network, are invited to come along to those, have that one-on-one time with the speaker as well. And then we'll be looking at how we adapt this for the virtual world moving forward into the year as well, so that those opportunities are still going on, and that you're able to harness the advantage of that and being able to meet some of the speakers, the great speakers that we have that come into the school. And on the next slide, this will be where Alana takes over to share with you some of the activities and events that have been running over the current year. So Alana, if I can hand over to you now, please.
Sure. So as we know, like this year has been quite interesting for us. So of course, we started the year with a list of, million things we wanted to achieve. And then, March hit and things shifted a bit. But I am quite happy to say that our events up until then were quite successful. And even after COVID hit, we were still able to put together some really interesting programs. So I just have a couple of photos of some of the events that were really popular and well received. And the 3 that I kind of want to talk to in more detail are this fall kickoff event, International Women's Day. And then we did have the study break social, which was kind of cool, but we also more recently launched a mentorship program that I wanted to chat about as well. So the kickoff event happened in the fall, and this was our way of introducing ourselves as OWLA co-chairs, because we had just been selected, but also soliciting interest from the class as far as director positions. So we went on to select directors within OWLA who could kind of help us carry out the events throughout the year. And what was cool about this kickoff taster was we partnered with the school admin to launch a video that discussed the importance of male allyship, which is something that we really wanted to touch on during our tenure. And so the kind of video introduction allowed us to kind of have this conversation around like what, you know, how can we leverage classmates and other male allies in order to get the men from the cohort involved. So that was kind of a really cool way to introduce ourselves and also just create kind of an openness to the idea that we wanted male involvement. So this one was really well attended, and it allowed us to, kind of solicit interest from the class. So this is something that I would definitely recommend for any of you who decide to be co-chairs this next year. And then the next event was International Women's Day. This event was very, very popular. We invited not only like our class, but also like EMBAs and also other folks from around the university to attend this event. We highlighted a couple really cool themes. So one was intersectionality. So it was really important that we found panelists who could kind of speak to their experiences and having like conversations around pay raises and navigating up the corporate ladder, but also from like a cultural perspective. So we kind of touched on like the differences and nuances of like negotiating and having difficult conversations from like a, you know, various like cultural standpoints, which was really cool. And then one of the speakers, Holly Brooker, coined this phrase like 10K more to discuss the importance of just being quite aggressive and asking for like the raise or the pay that you deserve. And so after the event, like 10K more was kind of something that was trending among like our MBA like Telegram groups. So that was really cool. And then after COVID hit, we wanted to make sure that we provided resources for the women of our class in order to help them find jobs, for example, because that was something that was at the top of everyone's mind and still is. So we launched a mentorship program pairing, and this program was for women, but we decided to open up to the men of the class as well, just because we realized the importance of finding mentors who can be helpful, and sometimes that isn't always someone who, you know, is from the same gender. So we opened this up to like the men and women of our cohort, but also like EMBAs and alumni. And so this is our way of creating like networking and personal, you know, relationship building opportunities for our classmates. And this program was like very, very well received. We had like 90 participants from our class who signed up, and we also partnered with the student council, which is kind of a separate like entity, but we partnered with like student council leads, and also like we have a diversity and inclusion chair. So we partnered with that person in order to make sure that we're also asking questions, like for example in our survey about like how to find mentors that can help someone from, you know, more diverse background, for example. So that program was again like really well received and is still kind of up and running, but we launched it this summer, and it's kind of still underway. So this kind of summarizes the events that we're able to kick off this year. And you know, it's been a challenging year, but we're still excited that we're able to kind of build these connections, and so it's been quite good in that way.
Thank you so much, Alana, and echoing what you said, it has been a really challenging year, but I think you've done a fantastic job at still putting on quite a few events. I know one of the main events you were speaking about for International Women's Day, that was, I think, the last event we did as a school in person, actually, before the lockdown hit. So we kind of ended our in-person events this year with that event, and it was a really successful event and is one that's still talked about today. So it was great to have the panelists that we did on that panel and have you run that. So thank you for everything you've done this year. And so in terms of the next part of the webinar, we'd like to move on to Q&A. So this is really your opportunity for everybody that's dialed in today, the incoming female students, to pose any questions that you may have around our gender-related activities, the OWLA network, or the general experience that Alana and Mariah have had at the school as part of the MBA. So I can see some questions are coming in, so please do keep those coming in for the next half an hour. I'd like to kick off with a question for Mariah, please. So after being a co-chair of the OWLA network, were you able to continue this work within your post-MBA role, inside or outside of Google, and how have you stayed in touch with the school as well?
Thanks, Corinne. Yeah, so coming from a tech background, before the MBA was mostly the only female in the room most of the time. So I was really involved in my pre-MBA role in kind of women's initiatives, women in tech. So when I was on the MBA, being a co-chair and being involved in as many kind of women's initiatives as possible was really important to me. But that kind of just helped build even more of my skills. And now in my current role, so I do, my day job is working on technology with customers, but within Google, I'm able to also participate and lead different initiatives. So we've launched a kind of EMEA-wide internal networking program, internal mentoring program for our cloud teams across a bunch of different countries in Europe. I also have had the opportunity to attend different conferences. So there's the Women of Silicon Roundabout conference that's normally in the fall. I think this year is, of course, online. There is the Wonder Woman Tech Conference. There's loads of different conferences within London, but also, of course, online now. So I've been able to kind of really stay involved in these sorts of initiatives and kind of carry that passion over from my pre-MBA days during the MBA and then post-MBA as well. And I've also really made a conscious effort to do my best to kind of stay involved with the school and act as kind of a alum that's happy to turn up and talk to potential MBAs or future MBAs or women who are interested or have accepted. I think I had quite a few mentors when I was applying. So I met one of a student from a couple years ago on the program when I was applying, and she was super helpful to me. And basically just wanted to kind of pay that forward and stay involved as much as possible, because it really is a special year. And especially this year, I know with everything that's happened, it's, the world is uncertain, but I'm really happy to stay involved and make sure that everybody has a great time on the MBA, and there is touch points with, outside of the MBA as well. So really lucky to have stayed involved and really appreciate kind of working with Corinne, yourself, and a lot of the other folks at SBS and, having me on board and really kind of enjoying talking with incoming students, prospective students. I know there's maybe a few people on the call who I've chatted with. So yeah, I've definitely, it's a passion. It's never going to go away. It's a problem that we all can't solve tomorrow. So it'll be around for the next many years for all of us to kind of keep fighting the good fight and stay involved in.
Thank you so much, and for your commitment to this as well, and the ongoing support. So you've been fantastic over the past year and before that as well, but you've been a great help to me and to the team. So thank you for your support, Mariah. And Alana, I've got a question for you as well. So how do you structure the alliance roles in a way that was effective for you this year?
Thanks, Corinne. Yeah, so there were 3 of us, which first of all is very important to kind of have that support of working in a group of 3. So I was the operations chair. So I kind of led the kind of the backbone of these major events. So for example, International Women's Day is kind of this marquee event, and that was my major responsibility in the spring. So I was more of kind of operations and events arm, and then Mahi was the careers liaison. So the careers team has great initiatives as far as ways to have webinars and bring recruiters to campus and things like that. And so Mahi was kind of the point person on that. And then Lily was the university-wide liaison. So at Oxford, there are many other women's groups, in the broader university. And Lily's role was to do outreach with those groups and build relationships and kind of streamline communications and find ways to collaborate, which was a really critical role as well. So the 3 of us just decided on these roles based on interest and capacity, and this structure really worked for us. So happy to answer any other questions about that.
I can see a couple of questions coming in the Q&A box, and one of them actually ties in with that a little bit. Someone asked, what is the approximate time commitment for a co-chair, if you would have to kind of put a number on it?
I would say it really depends week to week, month to month, but I would imagine there were some months when it could be as little as, I don't know, maybe 5 hours a month, and then other months it could have been like 15 hours or more. Just like leading up to International Women's Day, it was quite busy, so it really depended. But I'd say usually no more than like 5 or 10 hours a month-ish. That's helpful.
Cool, thank you. I also can see a couple of other questions. One would be, how big is the Alliance, and typically how many people would attend each activity? I can imagine that that varies, but if you maybe have some numbers for that as well from your relevant years.
Yep, I can go. I would say, so for International Women's Day, for example, that's kind of the marquee event. So we probably had maybe 60, 70 people is my guess. But for the other events, I would say, one, like students are quite busy, so you're kind of competing against like other events and initiatives. So sometimes, you know, turnout could be like 15 or 20 people or something like that. And sometimes that was the purpose, was to have more intimate experiences. So it really depended on like the kind of experience you're looking to have. And, you know, we were able to kind of shape that. Like, did we want a smaller group setting, or did we want something that touched like all the students in the class? So that's something you can control a bit.
Probably something that kind of ties in a little bit to that is the question on whether there are other alumni in the Alliance, or is it really more students led, or is it a wider group?
So for us, it was just the 3 co-chairs who were Oxford MBA students. We recruited like directors, so other Oxford MBA female MBAs who kind of worked with each of the 3 of us to help us implement our programs. But yeah, it was as far as the OWLA board is concerned, it was just Oxford MBAs.
Yeah, same for us. We also had myself and 2 other co-chairs. I think when we looked at potential speakers or potential panelists or potential people to come and chat to the women or this class, that's when we kind of tapped into the alumni network the most, because there's of course a large network within Oxford of alumni who have stayed, and then there's an even larger network when you include London. And then if it's virtual, then you have, there's loads and loads of women from across the past couple of years who, when we reached out, we're happy to help. And I'm sure, this next class reaching out, the same case would be as well.
Thank you. Martina would like to know if there's some sort of knowledge hub where people could find, for example, lists of activities that happened and were well received for inspiration, or guest speakers who might be interested to participate again after some time, and just generally to get some best practices and learnings.
I don't have something like that at the moment, although it is a good idea. For my year, when the 3 co-chairs were selected, we spoke to the previous year's co-chairs and just gathered a lot of that information from them. But yeah, that was kind of the primary way of us like exchanging that kind of information regarding best practices. But yeah, that's what I would say. I mean, it's a good idea though, to have some kind of resource like that.
Yeah, I agree. When we kind of took over from the class before us, we also just had a quick call. We actually had a few calls and just exchanged some emails back and forth to understand kind of what the initiatives were, how to keep, the successful ones going. I think a call like this would have been helpful as well. So I think hopefully this has kind of started the juices flowing of what you could potentially do, and what's been done in the past. So, you know, we had talked kind of one-on-one with the previous co-chairs, but even hearing what's gone on in the past couple of years has been really, really great to hear, because there is such a diverse sort of set of topics and diverse sort of set of you know, mediums of how everyone gets together and talks and goes through these different initiatives too.
Thank you. I have a question for you, Alana. Just curious to know more about the mentorship program you launched this year. I think this is a great initiative. How did you go about pairing mentees to mentors? Were mentees able to give you criteria or choose their mentors? How many people participated in the program this year?
Sure. So about 90 students participated, not as many alumni and MBOs who were the ones paired to the students. So we did have a bit of a shortage there. As far as the selection process, so we kind of divided and conquered this this kind of program, but my responsibility was to create a survey that was like really robust and captured a lot of information regarding like not just the basics of what was your previous job, you know, what industry do you like to enter and city, et cetera, but we also wanted to capture more of the like subjective information regarding like what are your interests and what are your passions, just because we knew that like many mentorship programs don't always capture those nuances, and sometimes you're just paired based on someone who had an identical job as you, and so sometimes the relationship you know, isn't as strong as it could be if you kind of like include some of that more you know, personal information. So we worked really hard to capture some of those nuances, and I'm happy to share maybe the survey questions with the incoming chairs for this coming year, if that's helpful. So we were the ones making the decisions regarding the matching, and we received like tremendous reception from the students and from the MBAs and alumni that like the matches were done quite well and people were quite satisfied with them. Also, I'd say because the program launched towards the end of the year, we knew each other quite well. So we kind of already knew, you know, people's personalities and kind of their interests and where they wanted to be. And so probably some of that also like subjective information was kind of useful as well. But yeah, I'm happy to kind of share the questions that we asked if that's helpful.
Thank you. I have a more general question. Did you feel like your involvement in OWLA fine-tuned your involvement in women's empowerment work?
I would say it definitely, kind of like I said before, it definitely kind of kept the passion up, and it was a really fun space, specifically for me who had just been kind of doing these sorts of initiatives just for tech, to really learn more about kind of women in finance and women in other parts of business as well. So yeah, I think it was a nice way to, I guess, keep the passion going, keep the interest going, and also connect with different women in the class. So it was a really, really great space to do that as well. And I think when Alana talked about the allyship work that her class did, I think that's also really, really great to hear that that was a focus too, because I think that's another really important thing is, of course, the women's initiatives, but also bringing allies into the conversation and making sure that that kind of is all wrapped up in the OWLA network.
I have another one for you, Alana. Could you please speak a bit more about how you and your fellow co-chairs made the move to virtual and kept up engagement in OWLA's initiatives, and what were the biggest challenges or learnings that this year's cohort could take on?
That's a great question. So I think the difference is when things transitioned to an online format for us, it was kind of unexpected. But the beauty in maybe this incoming class is that you one, I think organizations and including Oxford like have had learnings regarding how to maybe facilitate online events in a way that really works. And also it's kind of been the status quo for a few months now. For us, it was a bit tricky because, you know, like I said, we'd had plans to have speakers come to campus, for example, and then given the kind of chaos and uncertainty of the moment, some of those companies just weren't sure what they wanted to do and how to move forward. And so I think for us, we were kind of, you know, eye of the storm, like it's just kind of pure chaos. And so I think that was a little tricky navigating that experience. But I'd say at this point, my thought would be that like organizations have a better handle on how to facilitate like having speakers participate in an online format. And, you know, Oxford obviously has done a great job of like transitioning to an online format as well. So I'd say like the administration should be like a really great resource, and the folks on this call as far as like how to do that. I think we did have to be a bit creative. Like at the same time, most events regarding like speakers, for example, can be facilitated online. I mean, the only events that are quite challenging are maybe just, you know, when it comes to like social events within the class, because, you know, there are issues regarding like how many people can gather in one space. And so our class was very creative, not just from an ALA perspective, but like the student council, for example, hosted these like virtual formal dinners and things like that. So did a like tremendous job of trying to create, you know, sense of like social cohesion despite not being physically together. So, but I definitely say like at this stage, I don't think that hosting something online really takes away from like the quality or caliber of the event. It's more just like finding creative ways to still mingle as a class when, say, you have restrictions on like the number of people who can be in one space. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. I have one question, I assume for both of you again, and it's as an AWLA co-chair, were you able to take on any other leadership roles with OBN, Seed Fund, or had any other involvement with any labs during the year?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think Alana kind of talked about the time commitments before, and I would agree. I think some months were super busy, some months were a little bit less busy. I know myself and the other two co-chairs, we kind of had a weekly standing meeting. But just to give an example, one of the other co-chairs that I worked with had a 2-month-old when we started the program. And so when asking about can you take on other leadership roles, she obviously had quite a large leadership role to fill at home with her child. And she was incredible. She was able to make every single meeting. She was able to, be as active a co-chair as myself and our third co-chair. And so I think it's definitely, and I'm sure Alana can attest to this, but the MBA will teach you a lot about time management and prioritization. And so I think, I wouldn't suggest trying to be involved in every single lab and being a co-chair of one or multiple OBNs. I would say, try to stick to a few of your priorities. But, if there's multiple things that interest you, I think, Alana had talked about before the different director roles. So you don't have to be a co-chair if you're interested in kind of women's initiatives, tech, and you want to be part of the Africa Alliance. You can absolutely be a part of all three. But my advice would be to pick the one that's kind of the most important to you, or the one that you want to kind of have the most impact in, and maybe go for a leadership position there, and then be on the committee of the other two, or be a member of the other two, because you can still absolutely be involved, but just at maybe a slightly lower level, but you can still kind of have your say, make sure you're attending those events as well.
I think that's great advice. Just to echo what Mariah said, I also agree that you definitely want to prioritize. So I think she mentioned maybe pick which initiative is most important. And then I definitely think that you can gain a lot of value from just attending events and just being involved, maybe not at the highest level, but in another capacity. So I do think prioritization is really important. The advice that I got was that you maybe shouldn't join more than one. You can, but you might have to sacrifice things like sleeping or other things. So I think that advice is pretty accurate. I will say once COVID hit and things slowed down a bit, I was able to take on other leadership roles at the wider university. So when things were kind of at a standstill and nothing was happening, I decided to join the Oxford Union as the graduate officer, which turned out to be a really cool opportunity for me to mingle with the wider university. And I think just like as a piece of advice, like it's great to network and build relationships within the MBA, but I also think like building relationships outside of the MBA within the wider university can be hard for MBAs, because you're always together. You're kind of this really tight-knit cohort, but from my experience, like being involved with the union or other organizations at Oxford can be amazing resources and can really like enrich your experience in Oxford. So I'm so grateful that I did that. But that was like towards the latter end of the year. I think the first few months I definitely like focus on getting your footing and prioritizing, and then see like where you maybe have extra capacity to be involved in other ways.
Thank you. Great advice from you there. I have one for Mariah, and it's, did you work closely with the executive MBA class for OWLA initiatives? And if so, how was working with them?
Yeah, really good question. So I think kind of just reflecting back on the different initiatives that we did, I think we as the OWLA network probably didn't use the EMBAs as much as we should have. The EMBAs are an incredible, obviously, group of really, you know, established people in their career, and they also want to kind of have these conversations and chat to MBAs, and obviously they're MBAs themselves, they're just executive MBAs. But I would say, you know, my advice to whoever the new chairs are is try to make that relationship stronger. I think that's one thing that I wish we would have done when we were the co-chairs, but there's just such an amazing kind of network that you have right at your fingertips in the same school as you, that are, you know, the EMBAs are really willing to kind of work and help and attend and take part in these discussions, sit on panels, etc. So I would say that's just one piece of advice for the future chairs is get involved with the EMBAs, make some connections there and use them, because they're such a great resource to have kind of right next door, basically.
Thank you. Just had a question come in. Is there room in OWLA to make impact and create initiatives outside of the university as well, like targeting young women in less privileged societies and support them in finding jobs and lead them to the work possibilities for women?
I think those are great ideas. I would imagine so. I mean, to be honest, you do have a lot of autonomy. Like there are some major events that like the university does every year, like International Women's Day, but otherwise we really were given a lot of autonomy in deciding the kinds of events that we wanted to launch. And so I imagine if that's a priority for someone, that it would definitely be possible to get involved in that way, and that, you know, it might be a really great way of building relationships outside of the Oxford community as well. So I definitely think that's a great idea and that it could be implemented for sure.
And I have a slightly more general question. How would you say did being part of OWLA enhance your experience at Oxford in general?
I can go. So I'd say in two main ways. One would just be the kind of this kind of social network that you form within OWLA, and the second would just be the relationships that you build outside by like soliciting speakers and doing outreach. So for me, being a part of OWLA from the very beginning of the year was kind of grounding, and I was able to build relationships really closely with my other co-chairs and also the directors as well. And for me, I think just having a this like kind of mini cohort within the cohort was a really great way for me to feel like a bit more connected and to kind of feel more grounded. So that was a really wonderful, like that definitely enriched my experience. And then also when you're soliciting speakers to come to campus, for example, or speak webinars or whatnot, you have, like I said, a lot of autonomy over like who you choose and who you reach out to. And I really appreciated the ability to kind of like form these relationships with these high profile women, and to, you know, from there you can continue to build those relationships like after the events. And so I think that's a really great way to network and relationship build. So I'd say those are the two biggest takeaways for me.
Echo those 2 points, especially the first one. I know obviously there are sections, so there's section A, section B, and for kind of Michaelmas term most of your time is spent within your section. And OWLA kind of really allowed for me to meet and interact with and form relationships with people outside of my section, which was really amazing. And it also was just really cool to hear about what women and men in the class were interested in learning about. So, you know, what kind of speakers did they want to hear from that OWLA could bring in? What sort of topics did they want to discuss? What did, you know, prior to the MBA, what had their background been in women's initiatives? And I thought that was really cool as well. And one thing that really, I guess, resonated with me, and it was our last night after graduation, one of the guys from my class who was a traditional kind of American finance guy, at the beginning of the year, you know, we had a lot of tough conversations because, you know, he had maybe worked in a very male dominated industry before and maybe wasn't sold on the whole, you know, women's initiatives and women's leadership. And he actually pulled me aside at graduation and just said, like, thank you so much for everything this year. You've really taught me a lot about kind of women in business, and you've really changed my perspective. And that for me was worth every single event that we put on, every single time that, you know, one of us spoke up in class, every single speaker that we brought onto campus. So I thought that was really cool and really rewarding. And yeah, I think it's definitely kind of you get in what you put out, and there's so many different ways that you can be involved, and there's so many different directions you can take the network as well. So yeah, it's a really cool thing to be involved in, whether you're a co-chair, whether you're a committee member, whether you're a director, whether you just attend a few events. Definitely recommend it, and, you know, hopefully you guys enjoy it as well.
Oh yeah, that's a great story. I love that. Thank you for sharing. I have one more open question. I think we still have some time, so if you do have any more questions, keep them coming. I'm not sure whether this is for any specifically or just in general, but it's if you have any advice for successful virtual programming.
So for virtual programming, I would say for us, to be honest, from an OWLA perspective, we didn't so much rely on that. But from just, I guess, what I've seen, Saïd, in general, I think I would say, like, at this point, people are pretty well versed with you know, Zoom and conducting meetings virtually. So I'd say that's not so much of a concern. I would say maybe you know, it can be challenging, again, you know, given that the MBA is all about, like, building relationships. I think doing that in a virtual way can be tricky. So I guess my advice would be, from a social perspective, like, how can you augment, like, Zoom and virtual programming with, like, in-person events where possible. So, like, even if it means, like, smaller groups or doing things outside or something that you know, still kind of obviously within all the rules and regulations, but allows for some kind of person-to-person interaction, if at all possible. I think that would be my advice. So maybe kind of some kind of hybrid approach is what I'd recommend.
Thank you. I have a question here. How many directors are there? I think that was tying into something someone said earlier.
We had about 6 directors, so quite a few. And this was to allow for kind of different levels of capacity that each person has, and allowing for more people to get involved. So when we surveyed folks and asked who wanted to be directors, we got a lot of interest, and we figured it's probably better to have a wider group of directors rather than, like, maybe just one for each of us, just because of, you know, all the other ways that, like, people are pulled in different directions in the MBA. And I think that was a really great approach for us, because it allowed people that maybe felt like, oh, I'm already doing a million other things, I don't have time for this, to feel like, okay, at least I'm not the only one involved here. So I think more is better for my vantage point.
Thank you. Oh, well, that's just one comment. What is the difference between a committee member and a director? Are they the same thing?
So we just had directors, and then we just had members, people who weren't in assigned positions but could just attend events freely. So for us, yeah, we just stuck to the director title.
Yeah, I think we were, I guess, maybe similar, but just use different terms, I think. So we had the co-chairs, and then we had, and now I forget what we called them, but maybe they were committee members. But we had different people to who wanted to come on and lead different initiatives. So someone who was really passionate about Galentine's Day kind of led the Galentine's Day dinner. It wasn't, the three of us. We helped with getting funding and figuring out how to get people registered and stuff like that. But we just had people come on and kind of lead initiatives that they were really interested in. And then, yeah, we had, I guess, maybe we called them committee members, but we had, folks basically turn up to events, or, if there's a specific event that maybe they didn't want to lead, but they wanted to get more involved in, or kind of act as, like a helper, then they could do that as well. So the structure is kind of, at least from when we were there, it sounds like the same with Alana. It's kind of whatever works best and however you make it. But it also, it allows for different people to get involved in varying degrees as well, because, as we've said, there's loads of different things, loads of different initiatives, but sometimes people feel really passionately about one specific thing, and then, they can lead that with the support of the co-chairs or the directors.
Thank you. I just have one last question coming in. I think I'll go with that one, but maybe that will be the last one, unless Corinne has some other ones. But Cameron says, thank you for your time, ladies. And did you ever partner with other SBS clubs or organizations for joint initiatives? And how did that work? Also, how did you incorporate other diversity and inclusion issues into your initiatives alongside the work you do around gender?
Yeah, that's a really good question and a really, really good point. We certainly did. We did try to kind of work with other networks and other alliances throughout different initiatives. So I'm trying to. Sorry, it's been a few years, but I know the LGBTQ Alliance we worked very closely on for International Women's Day and different events there. We also, obviously everyone kind of knows each other, so who the different leaders are, and we were able to kind of share ideas and share responsibilities across different networks when we needed support, or when we were looking for support from another group. But I think you're right, there's obviously more DEI or diversity and inclusion initiatives than just gender. So I think that's a really good mindset to already have going in. And there's different ways to kind of tackle that and work across many of the networks, as well as working with the school to make sure that the initiatives that you want to happen do kind of get to see the light of day.
Yeah, I think just to echo that, it is super important. And for us, we try to bring that component across like all of the major events that we put on. So because it was just important to us from the beginning, we looked and said, okay, one, how can we build relationships with, like Maria mentioned, like the LGBTQ officer, but also we have a diversity officer, like how can we collaborate? And she mentioned like we throughout the year, you do get pretty close to people, and so you kind of already know who they are, and just having open communication with them regarding like the events they're putting on and ways to collaborate is always great. And then we, like, for example, for National Women's Day, we tried to solicit as many diverse panelists as we possibly could. It was a little bit challenging just to identify those folks, which, it's just, for whatever reason, is something that it's tricky to find folks who can come and who can like represent these diverse interests. And so we did struggle finding enough people, but in the end, I think the people who came to speak mentioned that, and they were able to still speak to that and what they talked about. And then lastly, like with the mentorship program, we incorporated questions that a lot of people to ask, for example, like, would you like to be paired with someone from like similar, like, ethnic minority background, for example. So, or like someone who's also from like the LGBT community, is that important to you? And do you want to be paired in that way? And so we tried to incorporate that as far as like the initiatives we put on, generally speaking.
Great, thank you both so much. And we are approaching the hour now. So I'd like to finish by asking you both one final question. So what would you say is the best or most important piece of advice that you could offer to our incoming female students that are on the line today?
I would just say to have fun and enjoy it. And I'm sure that's like the most basic advice ever, but it really is kind of a life-changing year. And I think I said it earlier, but you kind of get you get out of it what you put in. And you do have a year and you can get involved in many different things. So try new things, join different clubs. As Alana said, step outside of the SBS comfort zone as well. And really make sure that you take advantage of all Oxford has to offer, because when you're an old washed up alumni like me, you're going to look back on everyone on this call right now and be extremely jealous of the year ahead. But have fun. And yeah, if anyone has any questions after, I unfortunately have to run to another call, but I'm happy to connect on LinkedIn or answer any questions, and really, really excited for you all to start your year.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. Yeah, it's funny. I feel like we'd ask the same advice from the incoming class before me, or from the other classes before me, for example, and like you would get the similar advice of, yeah, just embrace it and have fun. And it's really true. I mean, we are quite jealous of everyone starting this year off right now. And I'd say in addition, just embrace the chaos. I think like COVID was kind of emblematic of just the chaos that, kind of is the MBA in general, which is that like you kind of do have to relinquish control. And I think like we have the saying in our like tech and ops class, capable but out of control, which just meant like fully capable, but like in this environment you're just pulled in so many directions, and there's you have to be okay with not having full autonomy over your schedule and how you're spending your time. And you want to socialize, you also want to pass your classes, and you want to enjoy everything that Oxford has to offer. So I think just embracing a bit of the messiness of this experience is really important. And I think for me also, there's a bit of pressure sometimes to just from a job perspective to like find something immediately and prioritize that above everything else. I think for me, while that was important, I kind of used the year to figure out what it was that I was really passionate about. And I'm really glad that I did that, because like I used a lot of my like assessment papers, for example, to explore interests that I'm really passionate in. And now I'm kind of following up on that and like looking for career opportunities within those particular spaces. And I'm glad that I allowed myself to kind of embrace the year and not feel pressured to like be so structured and have something immediately. So obviously there are trade-offs with that approach, but I feel quite happy about the way I like used the year. And I'm also just very open to chat with anyone and connect with anyone over LinkedIn or set up time to have virtual chatter. I'm actually here in Oxford as well. So, and I will be for the foreseeable future. So happy to connect with anyone in person as well.
Great. Thank you both so much, Mariah and Alana. It's been fantastic to have you involved today. So I hope you've all found the insights really helpful in regards to understanding how you can further enrich your time as an Oxford MBA student through OWLA and all of the other initiatives on board. Thank you so much to Franzi for your support today and with the Q&A. And finally, thank you to you, the audience. So thank you so much for your engagement today with some of the fantastic questions that have been coming through. Do get in touch with Mariah, Alana, or the team if you've got any further questions. But best of luck with your final preparations as launch approaches next month. Take care, stay well, and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you so much, everyone, for today.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.